This is some great news for a change. Finland is the only country in Europe where homelessness is in decline. Finland ends homelessness and provides shelter for all in need. This is on Humans Are Free. In Finland, the number of homeless people has fallen sharply. The reason is the country applies the housing first concept. Those affected by homelessness receive a small apartment and counseling without any preconditions. 4 out of 5 people affected thus make their way back into a stable life, and all this is cheaper than accepting homelessness. And it's the only country in Europe where homelessness is in decline. In 2008, you could see tent villages and huts standing between trees in the parks of Helsinki, Finland. Homeless people had built makeshift homes in the middle of Finland's capital city. They were exposed to harsh weather conditions. Since the 1980s, Finnish governments had been trying to reduce homelessness. Short-term shelters were built. However, long-term homeless people were still left out. There were too few emergency shelters, and many affected people did not manage to get out of homelessness. They could not find jobs without a housing address, of course. And without any job, they could not find a flat, and this was a vicious circle. And furthermore, they had problems applying for social benefits. All in all, homeless people found themselves trapped. But in 2008, the Finnish government introduced a new policy for the homeless. It started implementing the housing first concept. Since then, the number of people affected has fallen sharply. Finland has set itself a target. Nobody should have to live on the streets. Every citizen should have a residence. And the country is successful. It's the only European Union country where the number of homeless people is declining. Now everyone is given residence in Finland. It is NGOs such as the Y Foundation that provide housing for people in need. They take care of the construction themselves. They buy flats on the private housing market and renovate existing flats. The apartments have 1 to 2 rooms. In addition to that, former emergency shelters have been converted into apartments in order to offer long-term housing. Quote, "It was clear to everyone that the old system was not working. We needed radical change," unquote, said Juha Kaikinen, director of the Y Foundation. Homeless people turn into tenants with a tenancy agreement, and they also have to pay rent and operating costs. Social workers who have offices in the residential buildings help with financial issues such as applications for social benefits. Juha Kaikinen is head of the Y Foundation. The NGO receives discounted loans from the state to buy housing. Additionally, social workers caring for the homeless and future tenants are paid by the state. The Finnish lottery, on the other hand, supports the NGO when it buys apartments on the private housing market. The Y Foundation also receives regular loans from banks. The NGO later uses the rental income to repay the loans. Quote, "We had to get rid of the night shelters and short-term hostels we still had back then. They had a very long history in Finland, and everyone could see they were not getting people out of homelessness. We decided to reverse the assumptions." This is what Juha Kaikinen, director of the Y Foundation, says. Now, while migrants get free housing, a homeless Brit dies every 19 hours in the UK. And that's how the housing first concept works in Finland now. The policy applies in Finland is called housing first. It reverses conventional homeless aid. More commonly, those affected are expected to look for a job and free themselves from their psychological problems or addictions. Only then they get help in finding accommodation. Housing first, on the other hand, reverses the path. Homeless people get a flat without any preconditions. Social workers help them with applications for social benefits and are available for counseling in general. In such a new, secure situation, it's easier for those affected to find a job and take care of their physical and mental health. The result is impressive. 4 out of 5 homeless people will be able to keep their flat for a long time with Housing First and lead a more stable life. In the last 10 years, the Housing First program provided 4,600 homes in Finland. In 2017, there were still about 1,900 people living on the streets, but there were enough places for them in emergency shelters so that they at least did not have to sleep outside anymore. Now, providing people with apartments is cheaper than leaving them on the street. Creating housing for people costs money. In the past 10 years, 270 million euros were spent on the construction, purchase, and the renovation of housing as part of the Housing First program. However, Juha Kakinen points out this is far less than the cost of homelessness itself, because when people are in emergency situations, emergencies are more frequent: assaults, injuries, breakdowns. The police, healthcare, and justice systems are more often called upon to step in, and this also costs money. In comparison, Housing First is cheaper than accepting homelessness, and now the state spends 15,000 euros less per year per homeless person than before. No miracle cure, but it's a high success rate. With 4 out of 5 people keeping their flats, Housing First is effective in the long run. In 20% of the cases, people move out because they prefer to stay with friends or relatives, or because they don't manage to pay the rent. But even in this case, they are not dropped. They can apply again for an apartment and are supported again if they wish. Of course, there is no guarantee for success. Especially homeless women are more difficult to reach. They conceal their emergency situation more often. They live on the streets less frequently and rather stay with friends or acquaintances. This was from Contrast At, translated by Scoop Me, and it's on Humans Are Free. I hope other European Union and other countries of the world pick up this idea and enforce it, establish this type of a system in their own countries to take care of homelessness. That would be fantastic. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.